I fasted for just over 5 years, not literally, but I did some form of intermittent fasting. I did 72-hour fast, 24-hour fast, 36-hour fasts, you name it. Most of the time I did the 16-8, the typical fasting for 16 hours, eating for 8 hours. I stopped 2 years ago. In this video, I'm going to tell you what the majority of the evidence says, and at the end, if you still want to fast, I'm going to give you the best way, in my opinion, to do it. You'll hear so many people swear by fasting, say it's the best thing they've ever done and the best thing they do. I may even get comments from these type of people on this video, and I'm very open to them. So first, I'm not going to ignore the recent meta-analysis. For those of you that don't know, a meta-analysis is like an average of all the studies within a given criteria on a given topic. So this meta-analysis came out in November 2023, and they actually showed that all forms of intermittent fasting or time-restricted eating were slightly better than calorie restriction, a typical calorie restriction for weight loss. All the other health markers measured were not improved by doing intermittent fasting or time restricted eating. Does this mean that intermittent fasting might be better for weight loss? The issue is the meta-analysis, this specific meta-analysis, actually took into account studies that weren't calorie controlled. What I mean by that is basically studies that weren't matched for calories. So you had like an intermittent fasting group and a normal eating group, and the calories weren't matched. In studies that are controlled for calories, there seems to be no difference between intermittent fasting and a just typical calorie restrictive diet. And what this study does show is it shows that there's, intermittent fasting is not worse by any means for weight loss. So now what you came here for, we've got that out of the way, we've got the recent study out of the way, I've acknowledged that, and I do accept that it's not worse, but you've got many wild claims going on for intermittent fasting, and the first wild claim is you'll just lose more fat than a regular calorie deficit. Look, there's no specific magic to intermittent fasting. It's not some magic thing that you do and you eat whatever you want and you just lose all the body fat you have, you get shredded, you get diced. No. When calories are the same, so both people are in a calorie deficit, there is no difference in fat loss in the long run. Okay, so Adam, weight loss aside, what about the health benefits, the magical health benefits? So from this study, the biomarkers that were looked at, the health markers that were assessed, there was no specific benefits, no added health benefits for doing intermittent fasting. I do understand the crazy claims, but there's no added benefits when calories are controlled. Potentially, it may add a couple of years or maybe as many as I think I read between 4 and 6 years onto your life, maybe. Another common one I get is it's easy to stick to. It's super simple to follow. There's a structure. You know when you eat, you know when you don't eat. However, what does the research say? So the research says that when comparing the two over the course of 2 years, for example, this specific study, intermittent fasting versus a continuous calorie restriction, intermittent fasting was actually more difficult to follow, more difficult to adhere to. Look, some people can find it easier, some people will find it more difficult. It depends on the person. Some people will find it, it's no big deal. I can do intermittent fasting. I might as well do it if I can do it. And that's fine, you can, but there's no specific health benefits here. Now, if we look at the wildest claim, intermittent fasting can quadruple, can 10x, 20x your HGH and testosterone levels. So let's cover testosterone first. So one particular study actually found that fasting decreases testosterone levels in men. And from what I know, the increases in HGH levels are not they don't last long enough to have any benefits, and B, they're just not significant. Otherwise, if they were, we would see greater fat loss or greater muscle gain in studies when you compare intermittent fasting to doing like a normal way of eating basically, but you don't. One of the main problems I see with intermittent fasting is people think, oh, I've got this extra HGH, extra testosterone, you know, my diet doesn't matter too much. I need to just confine it and eat in a narrow window and I should be fine. And then they don't get in enough protein, especially people that do OMAD, and that can result in muscle loss in the long term. It doesn't have to be that way. You can still maintain the majority of your muscle, but when you're doing like OMAD, it's not going to be optimal, not going to be ideal, because the research does say, like the weight of the research says that you need between I wouldn't say you need 3 to 4 meals a day, like of protein, is better than like 1 to 2 meals. I personally don't do intermittent fasting and wouldn't recommend it off the cuff, but if you want to do it, you really want to do it, then I recommend 5 different things. 5 different simple things to apply. You can do some of them or all of them. The first thing I think is the most important is do a 16 to 8. Do a fasted window of 16 hours and an eating window of 8. That gives you a good opportunity to get at least 3 servings of protein in. That's what I did the majority of the time. I think that's doable for most people, and that could actually help you get into a calorie deficit. If it doesn't and you feel super stressed out, then yeah, maybe it's not for you. Or if it just doesn't help, it's not for you. The next option is to do a protein sparing modified fast, a PSMF. I'm not trying to sound all clever here. All this really is like a day, maybe or 2, or maybe you do this like the whole time. When you're meant to be fasting, instead of fasting, you'll have servings of protein in your fasted windows, but it'll be just protein. So it'll be very low in calories. So for example, if you train in the morning, maybe before the gym, you'll have a serving of protein, and after the gym, you'll have a serving of protein. Then you'll break your fast with a proper meal, maybe at 12, like you would normally. So then you're keeping the servings of protein up, and you're also helping your workouts by giving them a steady flow of amino acids to prevent muscle breakdown. The third thing I would do is, what I recommend doing, is breaking your fast around when you work out. Say if you work out in the morning, you break your fast after your workout. If you work out in the evening, you break your fast in the evening, but after your workout. So that way, your body's more sensitive to uptake carbohydrates into the muscle, to utilize protein to build muscle. So that will be beneficial if you're, like I said, keen on doing fasting. So make sure you're not doing what some people do, is they continue to fast and they just elevate muscle, like protein breakdown. They elevate the process of actually breaking down the muscles rather than actually going into repairing them by fueling them. And the fourth one, you don't want to encounter any nutrient deficiencies, vitamin deficiencies. So don't do what some people recommend, like eating whatever you want. Oh, don't track, just eat whatever you want, you'll be fine. No, still eat whole foods, still eat your fruits, vegetables, lean sources of protein, getting in enough fiber. Those things are still important for your gut health, also for your general health as well. You don't want to run into deficiencies, then feel like crap and feel like garbage, and actually then it can undermine your health. And the last one is still prioritize sleep. You might be thinking like, oh yeah, of course I'll still sleep. But what I used to find was, it used to affect my sleep, especially if I was having a bigger meal, like too soon before I slept, for example, or if I started fasting too early. Maybe I started fasting at 4 or 5 just to play around with it, or to do longer fasts. It would interfere with my sleep. So make sure you're not having a huge meal. Like I'd say stop eating like 3 to 4 hours before bed. If you're having a huge meal, that is. You can do it as like soon as like 2 hours before bed. Some people find it affects their sleep. Most people, actually I'd say most people do, but some people find they can sleep just fine. Play around with it, see what works with you, well, for you in general. And if you like, try not to go to bed like super hungry. That's gonna be an issue for most people. That is all I wanted to cover. All the studies I talked about are in the description below. If you have any questions or any debates, please do drop them below. Any deeper questions, send me a message on Instagram at AdamScottFit. I will reply. Have the best day ever, and we'll talk soon.